Good evening, Browns fans, and welcome to OBR Weekly. It's Wednesday, 7 o'clock. It's time for Fred and me to do our thing, at least for this week. We were off last week. We're on this week. We're going to be off again next week. But we're going to do our thing, and thank you, chat username, for trusting us over the course of the next hour to talk Cleveland Browns at you. Unfortunately, Fred, we're in a bit of a dead zone right now. I need to introduce you. That man right over there, that is the legend. That's Fred Greetham. Been doing this well nigh 20, 25, 30 years covering the Cleveland Browns. Like yours truly, I have been doing the same, but I don't go out to Berea like you do. I don't talk to the players like you do. That's why you're the legend, and I'm just a web dork. But welcome to the show, Fred. How you doing?
I'm doing good. Thanks for the introduction. I mean, everybody's got an important role in this. Not everybody can do, all the glamorous things, but no, I'm hyped up. I'm energized. I'm on Red Bull or whatever it is. Kind of assuming that's what will happen tomorrow night in a presidential debate. There'll be some energy going on there.
Yeah, exactly. Some energy going on there. And then I will be expending no energy. I'm going on vacation, which is why there's no show next week. I am going to step away from the digital realm for a few days and get away from my web dorky behavior. But first, we are going to talk some Cleveland Browns. We've already got a couple questions. Thank you, Drew and Brick City and Fumble 13 for firing off a couple questions to us. As you guys know, if you are regulars on the program, regular watchers of the program, we really rely on your questions and your comments in the YouTube and in the Twitch chat rooms to drive the program. I show up with some questions, mostly based around Fred's articles from the last week, but we really want to talk about what you want to talk about, and we sort of start from there. But, news of the day today, we're sort of hard up for news these days, but the Browns did announce their training camp schedule today with a mere 6 practices, Fred, open to fans, as your article on the front page of the OBR indicates, starting on August 4th after the team returns from Greenbrier. Fred, do you ever remember the team having so few practices available for the fans to watch? This seems like a low number.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few things going on. This is the second year in a row they've went out of state to open camp for a prolonged period of time. When you're down there 9-10 practices, that's a legitimately long time now. Days are over of the 6-week, 2-a-days, when, kind of in the old days when I covered them, they practice morning and afternoon, and it was an all-day affair, and it was like 6 preseason games. A lot of times the players played themselves into shape, and then they cut it to 4. Well, now it's all the collective bargaining with the players. They're limited on the number of practices that they can have and how many pads and how many days off they get. And so first off, that's changed. And Kevin Stefanski likes being away and having, somebody asked a question, ATI, about thinking about going to Greenbrier. We can go to Greenbrier, but you can't watch no practices. They're not open to the public. There's only 10 to 12 of us that are out there watching practice. And so, the OBR is fortunate to have, credential to be able to do that. And, just, not tooting the horn, but every bit of information that comes out of there pretty much is coming from about 10 to 12 people or cameras from channel 3 or 5 or 8 or 19. Everything else, is videos from reporters, the 10, 12 of us that are there every day. So, as far as Kevin Stefanski likes that, and there was so much comment last year, the players kept referring it, not just him, on how Greenbrier, they really got close as a team. So I knew pretty quickly they were going back there. I mean, the rumor was within a week after we were gone that they were already talking about going back. So I don't know if this is going to be every year, but if they're successful in their season, last year they're 11-6 with 5 different quarterbacks, why would you not do that? Now, yes, this is probably the fewest practices open to the public that I can ever remember. And the Minnesota Vikings are coming in before the second preseason game. Like, I think that game's on the, 10th? And I think on the Thursday or Wednesday and Thursday of that week, because Friday will be the off day, and then they'll play on Saturday at Cleveland Brown Stadium. The Vikings are in, but unlike the last time the Eagles came in, which was open to the public, these are not open either. These are just closed again. And here's a dirty little secret. Not just the Browns, not just Kevin Stefanski. For the most part, NFL head coaches really don't want fans there because as limited as they are, you've seen in my tweeting and videos, we're not allowed to video whenever they go to team drills, 11-on-11. we're not allowed to report on it. Now, we were in off season. You're allowed to do that in OTAs and minicamp. But once they get to training camp on, none of that. And they can't control the fans. I remember sitting in the stands during the COVID, and for one reason or another, I couldn't get into the practice for one day. And I videoed from the stands, just like all the people around me. And I got called on the carpet for it. Even though Barry or whoever else is sitting all around me, the fans, you can't take their cell phone cameras. So all that information's getting out. And I just think NFL coaches, not just the fan, they're all paranoid that somebody's studying that film and gonna use it against them. So no, I think part of it, if they didn't go to Greenbrier, there would probably be, double the practices open, or more. But if they get away and then you bring in another team, last year they went to Philadelphia, so fans couldn't go there. And so I don't know how many practices last year were open, but yeah, it is kind of, and they got them spread out. There's like one a week, I think, or there's a couple might have two, but 6 isn't, between August 4th and like August 18th or something. They got them going around there. So it will be interesting. But the players do play up to the fans, and I think they want them more focused and besides all the other stuff. So, that's just my opinion, but I do think that there is construction going on. The Haslams have bought almost every house available, or not available. They just bought this whole street, Pearl Street. And there was 2 houses remaining that were holdout. One was demolished during rookie minicamp, and the other one was still standing, but the owner had vacated. They had bought them out. So they bought all the houses and a church, and there was a Serpentini collision center, bought that out. Now I've heard they want to maybe build a hotel. They want to build another building for the training, and the media and all that kind of stuff. And so I think a lot of that will be for fans to come in the future because they want them buying merchandise and they want them staying in a hotel and all that kind of stuff. So I don't know, but, be happy, I guess, with the 6. I guess those tickets will be hard to come by because I know a lot of people plan their summers around it.
Yeah, you got 6 practices available, and the way it works is that there's not paper tickets. You have to buy them but get them through the Browns mobile app. Season ticket holders get first dibs, and then the next day everybody else can try and get in. And with only 6 practices available, you better be ready there on your phones to try and get one of those tickets. So not going to be easy. So be alert, stay frosty, go in and get those tickets. And I'm sure the folks on the cooler will be conspiring. And, if you want to stay up to date with what's going on with that, just join us in the cooler around that time. We've got a couple questions, so let's go straight to the questions. This first one from Drew in Brick City. Asking, I think this is the 4th regular season game against the Las Vegas Raiders. Asked, how does the Raiders head coach's wife's bankruptcy affect him as a coach? Got to be distracting, right, Fred?
Yeah, it's first I've heard of it. I to be honest, I hadn't paid attention, but I assume they're still married, so I would think it'd affect him. I know if my wife, we're one and the same in business, but if the wife is bankrupt, I think it affects the husband. So I really don't know what to say about that. I would think mentally it would affect you, but I don't know what that means. I don't know what type of bankruptcy or whatever. I'm sure, if they knew this was coming, they would have you know, they would probably have to, separate things out or whatever.
Yeah.
And he's going to have to be coaching for a while.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's got to be a huge distraction, a huge source of stress and anxiety on in a pressure-filled job already. Being coach for the Davis family out there in Las Vegas, got to be difficult. And Drew in Brick City says he's bringing it up because of gambling. You know, obviously nothing there that we know of with regard to Antonio Pierce and any involvement in that respect. But it's not a good situation there, and you know, just glad it's not Cleveland, right?
Well,
Glad
some of
it's not
those
Kevin
things,
Stefanski.
something like 28 million or whatever the figure you put up there, I mean, just doesn't happen overnight. I mean,
Right,
this guy was the interim coach last year after they fired McDaniel, I believe. And so I would think they would know a little bit what was going on before, when they decided to extend him and make him the full-time head coach. I
right.
think they interviewed some other candidates or were kind of going through the process. So it's hard for me to believe that this came out of the woodwork, that nobody knew about this. But,
Right.
if he didn't ever disclose it and it affects the team or affects some of that side of it, I guess that, but yeah, you talk about gambling. I really don't know what I'm talking about because I haven't followed this. So I don't know, and I don't want to say that it was gambling or anything
Yeah,
because
it had
NFL is very,
something to do with car dealerships and investments and things like that. I I suspect you and I are a little bit alike. If it's not Cleveland Browns, it's not our primary focus. I'm a horrible fantasy football player because I don't focus on other teams unless they're an upcoming opponent of the Cleveland Browns. It's all Cleveland Browns and who are we playing next, and it's all focus on that. If I'm not paying too much attention to the Raiders, but I did see the story today, but. It didn't get through the Berry filter because it wasn't Cleveland Browns. But at any rate, we got a question from Fumble 13 as well. He said, will the stadium deals that Jacksonville and Carolina just got put any pressure on Cleveland or Brook Park to help the Haslam Stadium plans? And boy, oh boy, totally different situations in Ohio than you have down in Florida and Carolina. I would think both politically and financially, I'm not sure necessarily that they translate up here in Ohio, in Cleveland. I would think that it would put some pressure on Cleveland to, try to match, but I haven't read anything or seen anything about local politicians suddenly finding their checkbooks and finding stashes of money to hand the Haslams. What do you have any opinions on this, Fred?
no. It's kind of like the Raiders, as far as all I know is, when they tell me where to go or, whatever, I just think the Haslams, if this is what they want to do, it's going to get done. And I don't think they lack for resources. I think that they're just going to see what the options are and what they can do, but it always does. I mean, this kind of recycles every 20-25 years.
Yeah,
Everybody wants a new deal, everybody wants a new stadium. I don't think it's, Carolina and Jacksonville, I think, were they the last two expansion teams? They
mm-hmm.
get the stadium and now it's about time to redo some things. And the thing is the NFL just prints money and it's such a popular business. They know that all you got to look at Las Vegas, Al Davis, his son, whatever they dangled, were leaving. He kept leaving, going back and forth. Oakland, LA, Oakland, LA. Now he goes
Right.
to Las Vegas. Somebody will always pony up, and that's we saw that here in Cleveland, but um, I don't think it has anything to do with getting it done here. It's going to get done if the Haslams want it to get done. It's just a
Well,
matter of where and when.
this has, very special meaning to me because, the reason the OBR exists is because Art Modell moved the team from Cleveland to Baltimore, and a web dork, on the east side of Cleveland got very upset about it and created a website, right, which morphed 30 years later into the Orange and Brown Report. And I spent a lot of time tormenting the people of Baltimore about how stupid they were to give Art Modell tons and tons of money, right? And, at this point, I know because I did a lot of research back in those times that if you're spending a ton of money on a stadium, you're spending that ton of money not because it's going to make it all back for your community, but because you love football and you want a football team in your town, right? And if the Haslams believe that building Jimmy World out in Brook Park is going to make them money hand over fist, then they're free to invest in it. But they want the city and the state to invest a lot of money in it, so they have to convince them that it's a good investment. And so far they've got a lot of work to do. Paul Spencer says without Art Modell there would be no Barry McBride. Well, Art Modell had nothing to do with me being born. Trust me, there's no relationship there whatsoever. But he does have there is causality between him and the existence of the OBR. Most certainly. And I have a birth certificate, so I don't need to prove it any more than that. At any rate, more questions, please. More questions. We will riff on anything you hand us. Absolutely. Please feel free to offer any questions that you have in the chat rooms on Twitch or on YouTube. We will jump on anything you get. But in the meantime, let's talk about Cedric Tillman, Fred. You had a great piece on Ced Tillman that you published on Tuesday. And in it, you point out that Andrew Berry has taken a swing at wide receiver in the draft every single year. And is starting to look like he had a hit on Donovan Peoples-Jones, a sixth-round pick. It's starting to look like Ced Tillman is his best chance at hitting the lotto this season. And, a lot of people were writing Tillman off after his rookie season. But what has happened that Tillman is what has happened that Tillman has started to move to the forefront now and is getting so much hype?
Stay focused and quit getting distracted by these comments about who's your daddy and all that.
Sorry about that.
No, thanks for talking football. We're at 7:20, and now we're talking some football here.
There you go.
As far as Tillman, I had a source off the record tell me they really are high on Tillman and think he can be their 3 receiver, if not 4, this year. And, that's big because Elijah Moore's in the final year of his contract. They spent a second-round pick and traded for him. And he had the best year of his career. I mean, it wasn't what everybody high expectations, but he did have 59 catches, like 640 yards. They tried to use him in a lot of ways early, didn't seem to really pan out, but they're still high on him. They traded for Jerry Jeudy, and Amari Cooper, is in a contract situation. So you have Cooper and Jeudy, your clear-cut 1 and 2. They're both out of OTAs and mini camp. I mean, Jeudy had a minor injury. Cooper held out or didn't show up, took the fine, wants a new deal. So Tillman got to run with the first team with Elijah Moore, and he got a lot of reps. He was there. Anyway, I asked the question at the last practice with Kevin Stefanski after practice. That was the last time we talked to him before the break. I asked him about Tillman, and I actually was on vacation last week, and I never got around to writing it until yesterday. I know some other ones wrote about it, but that was a question that we asked Kevin, and and he said, yeah. And he went on and on like he was waiting for the question because he really praised him. And Chad O'Shea, the wide receivers coach, also talked about him. And somebody said, I couldn't confirm this, but somebody said that he was named the offensive MVP for camp. I don't know if that was unofficial or what. But O'Shea kind of danced around it, didn't say yeah he was, but said, well, let me just answer it this way. So he did really well in the off season. So I think he heads to training camp with a clear shot to definitely be at least the number 4 receiver behind the top 3. And so that could be huge. He's got a different skill set. He's big, he's tall, he's rangy. He can go up and get a contested ball. He can block. He can do a lot of things that they want. And if he can show and have a breakout year in a second year, they might, I don't know what they'll do if they'll bring back Elijah Moore or, what they'll do, with like Jamari Thrash is another one, but he's a rookie. Takes a while for rookies to contribute. David Bell is in his 3rd year, showed a little bit, but he really just seems to be a possession receiver to me and not really a game-changing type guy. So I think clearly Tillman sits at the 4 as they open training camp. Anything can happen with injuries and so forth. He got hurt at the end of last year, didn't get to play in the playoff game, but that's why they traded Donovan Peoples-Jones to open up for him. He got to play a little bit, but as he was just kind of getting going, he got injured. So I think they feel good about him. We'll see what happens. I also think that I was kind of calling for another veteran receiver to be the 4th guy. I wanted a guy, no disrespect to Jerry Jeudy, but I almost wanted, when I said trade for a veteran, I was looking for one maybe a little older like a Cooper, that had been there, done that. Jeudy has a lot of potential and they're banking on the potential, but I still think they could use a veteran that could step right in and help out. If they're really going to play multiple wide receivers in a spread formation, you're still kind of thin. You take Amari Cooper off the field and you kind of feel like, wow, do you have anybody that really scares you? So, that's where it is. I think a lot of these positions, they'll go to training camp, and if they feel good about it, that's where they'll stay. But I think they would also address it if need be with injuries, obviously, or as training camp goes on. I say this at several positions. Last year, defensive tackle, we wondered about it a little bit. After Greenbrier was over, that was almost 2 weeks, they signed Shelby Harris, and he's probably the best guy they acquired, and they brought him back this year with a 2-year deal. So I see a lot of potential for pickups or trades, towards the end of training camp, depending on how they feel, whether it be defensive ends, linebackers, wide receivers, whatever position that could get hit with injuries, or they feel they need to buff up, because they've got a lot of young guys and they're going to give the young guys a chance to show. But if they don't feel good enough, then I think they would go, make some moves. They got a couple areas where they got some depth and they could maybe swing an extra defensive tackle for a veteran wide receiver or a veteran tight end or something like that. So rather than just cut a guy. So I see a lot of things happening. Somebody asked about, being real aggressive. I don't know how aggressive they'll be, but as needs present themselves or opportunities, yes, I see them doing it. But I think Tillman, they really, when 3 years in a row, third round pick, Anthony Schwartz, we all know, boom, he's gone. David Bell, I think he's in a battle to make the team. And then Tillman, I think he's the best of the lot. Haven't seen really enough of Thrash this year, to compare him. But Peoples-Jones was a pretty good for a 6th round, but they soured on him or decided they weren't going to re-sign him, so they traded him for a pick. So Tillman, I think, has a chance to be a contributor in a big way this year. Are you muted?
Yes, I am. I said I have some other prognostications from you that we're going to get to here shortly. But first, let's get to the questions in the chat room. This one from Kelly asking, what position will they fill with the open roster spot? That open roster spot enabled by Lonnie Phelps, who was disinvited from the Cleveland Browns roster after a Friday night adventure a couple of weeks ago. They've been sniffing around a lot of offensive linemen, Fred, sort of looking to build depth there with an open roster spot. You think they look there? Maybe they look, somebody might be able to help them on special teams with this new kickoff. Any place in particular you think they might be looking?
Well, I think Phelps was an edge rusher. I think he was sitting about 6th on the depth chart.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. Usually you can look at recent releases or guys you cut, because a lot of times those are the first they bring back. I know that they were moving guys in and out. I don't really know who are some of the ones that they let go, going into the offseason or during the offseason program that come to mind. But I don't think they're in any hurry, right now. There's going to be players, available. Like I said, 30-something guys. Every year there's guys like Shelby Harris. The Browns did Malcolm Smith, a 30-something linebacker, a few years ago, and he was 2nd leading tackler on the team. Didn't show up till mid-August. So
right.
They know those guys can come in. And so I even think there's still some veteran free agent edge rushers that they could bring in, but they might bring in a young guy, just to compete for a body at training camp, at the defensive end position, because they know they don't necessarily have to go get somebody. Let me just say this. I don't think Lonnie Phelps was going to make the team unless they had some injuries on defensive end. And obviously you don't want that. But he's sitting there 6th or 7th, on the team, and they probably wouldn't keep more than 5, as it sits now, because they have a lot of defensive tackles. So I don't think they're in any hurry. But look for somebody at a position, like you said. They were working out a lot of tackles, offensive tackles.
Right.
And you don't know if that means Jack Conklin's not really coming along very quickly, or Jedrick Wills, or what. Neither of them practiced during the mandatory mini camp. So until they show up and we see what goes on, or who ends up on the physically unable to perform, anything can happen.
Right, absolutely. Hey, listen, let's take a distraction from the Twitch chat room, which is filled with blasphemy and lies at this point, thanks to Paul and Red Leader, and concentrate on our Core Fitness sponsor, who deserves the attention, rather than all those rampant lies in the Twitch chat room. We are very happy to have Core Home Fitness as our sponsor for this program. They have sponsored us pretty much all year. and you can find them at corehomefitness.com. These guys are the premier home fitness equipment manufacturers that you're going to be able to find, particularly their adjustable dumbbells, which are at the top of the market, ranked best on the planet by Men's Health, the New York Times, Consumers Reports, you name it. They're a best buy by Consumers Reports. These guys are very good. If you take a look at their website, corehomefitness.com, they've got all kinds of videos, instructional, motivational stuff that you're going to want to check out. They have great support, no hassle returns, very fast shipping, and these guys have stepped up to sponsor the OBR. We really appreciate their support, and we hope that if you're looking to get in shape, you're looking to bring the gym home, that you will look first at Core Home Fitness and corehomefitness.com. Thank you very much, guys. Really, really appreciate it. So that's our sponsor, Core Home Fitness. So let's go to another question, one that you referenced earlier, Fred, from chat username. He says, I know most people are happy with the roster, but do you see aggressive acquisitions from cuts or free agents? And your take on that seemed to be mostly along the lines of there being, in the case of injuries or something along those lines, right, Fred?
Well, or the young guys don't live up to what they're hoping. I think Shelby Harris was a direct signing last year. They got down to Greenbrier. Jim Schwartz looked at the defensive line room and said, I need a veteran defensive tackle. And they had a list and they went and got Shelby Harris. I mean, they let those younger guys be out there and practice and show what they have. And I'm not saying it was Siaki Ika wasn't ready. He clearly wasn't because they never played him all year. Or it could have been, I don't remember the other guys, but, I think that's what happens. And they go into training camp knowing they don't play till September 10th. The only risk is you could lose somebody but they have their short list at each position of veterans that are available. And they have relationships, even with the agent saying, hey, before you sign with anybody, would you give us a courtesy call? And, or something like that, because it's getting to be those 30-something guys that end up getting the 1-year deals. A lot of them, instead of signing in March or April, they just sit there and wait to see what their options are, knowing somebody's going to call them probably in July or August or even September. So I wouldn't say aggressive. Last year, if you remember the final cuts, they got aggressive and traded for Dustin Hopkins and cut Cade York, which a lot of people were surprised. I mean, It was a great move. Okay. But when they did all their cuts, obviously they brought back most of the practice squad were guys on there that were with them all training camp. And they kind of pattern, when they go, they'll have 90 players. In all said and done, they can have 69, 53 regular, roster and 16 practice squad. So there's a strategy. There are guys that they cut that they're pretty sure nobody will claim. And those are guys they want back on practice squad, just like draft picks. Usually other teams had them ranked higher. And if you cut a draft pick, it makes you look bad, one thing. But another reason they don't cut them is because another team probably likes the guy and could sign him. And so they kind of use a strategy, because lately the Browns have, when they did their 53, it wasn't like the past where they're getting all new practice squad. They're almost bringing everybody back that was with them in training camp. So they really like their guys. So it seems like they're bringing back 13, 14 out of the 16. With that said, last year, the only move they made, I don't know if you remember, they're only signed one guy on waivers or claimed, and that was Khalif Halasi, who was an undrafted cornerback from the Chiefs. And in the final preseason game, he played the majority of the game, and they really were impressed with him. They claimed him, even though he wasn't drafted, and had to put him on the active roster. And he was on the active roster all year. He never really played. He was inactive every week. So you have to think they really liked the guy. That was really the only move they made. So I don't know if that'll be the same this year, but I don't expect them to claim a lot of people. I see most of the moves being made on the practice squad and trying to get most of the guys somewhere coming back from the training camp roster. Now, you're always going to lose guys. If you cut those guys and they get claimed by another team, there's nothing you can do about it. So that's really where the holes were. I think they talked to most of these guys that are at training camp saying, hey, this is our plan. We want to bring you back. If you don't get claimed, we really like you. We want you to come back on the practice squad. And the practice squad isn't like it when it started. They make pretty good money now. I mean, they're making 10, 15,000 a week, to be just practice. So I remember when they started it, it was like 300 or 400 a week. Now there's no guarantees. They can get cut any time, but there's been guys on this team now for like 3 or 4 years have been on the practice squad and made a living. John Kelly's one, Zaire, Mitchell Payton, so practice squad's kind of like your farm system, it allows you to have 69 guys that you like. And this is going to be a tough roster, I think, to make cuts. Obviously the injury bug, you hope there isn't, but that always factors in. You always lose some key players, it seems like, in the preseason, and then you got to adjust. And that would determine how aggressive they make moves because, like I said, to cut a 4th-round kicker last year, they just felt like this year they are in it to win. And if there's somebody that's at a key position, they're going to be aggressive to try to make sure they're not thin. I mean, look at quarterback. They almost did overkill. I mean, you got 4 veteran quarterbacks now on the roster, whereas last year you had 4, but Mond had never played, and Dobbs really had never played, and DTR was a rookie. Those were the guys behind, Watson. This year you got Jameis Winston, former number 1 pick, Tyler Huntley, who went to the Pro Bowl after he backed up, Jackson for like 4 years, and DTR, who showed a little promise, but he's played, so he's in his 2nd year.
Yeah. In terms of, these late acquisitions, I just think we've been trained, through the expansion years all the way through the Hugh Jackson 1 in 31 years to expect a lot of movement at the end of the year because our roster just wasn't deep, and they were making a lot of moves, all the way up to player number 35 or player 40 on the roster. And now our roster's deep enough that, there's no room. There aren't guys out there that automatically fit into our top 53.
Well, and they're signing guys specifically to be on special teams, like Justin Hardy and Tony Brown. Those are just special team aces. I mean, not so much Brown, but Hardy was. I mean, he's a Pro Bowl. Last year they had a couple of them guys, Matthew Adams and the cornerback Mike Ford. I mean, he played a little bit on defense, but they're signing these guys just to play special teams. And your roster's pretty good when you're getting guys that are just coming in basically to be specialists. So that's I think that's really a good sign. And I think the roster, the deeper and deeper you get, your special teams are going to get better and better. And so I think that's good. I mean, you talk about it. We can remember the days when they're drafting a guy in the 4th round and hoping he's going to be the starting right tackle or
Yeah,
starting
exactly.
wide receiver. Or now those guys don't even play. They're inactive on game day. And they're just there because they didn't want to cut them because they know that somebody else would claim them. So
Right.
there's a lot
Right.
of roster gymnastics going on, and there's going to be some this year because it's good. All these guys can't make the team. I think Jack Duffin did something about guaranteed contracts. I think the Browns had over 40 guaranteed contracts in some
Yeah.
way. I mean, okay, and you can only keep 53, so
That doesn't give you a lot of room to maneuver. There's not a lot of open jobs on the Cleveland Browns 53-man roster, that's for sure. Hey, we've gotten a nice little flood of questions here, so let's dive through them here. First one from James Porch asks about a potential Cooper for Ayuk trade that has been mentioned. I have not seen anything real about this indicating that the Browns or the Niners are, actually discussing it, that, it's got any real traction, but you've got one holding out for an extension, and the Niners apparently considering dealing their wide receiver. Um, doesn't seem real practical to me, but what are you thinking, Fred?
oh, thanks for the question, James. I'm assuming you're not the punt returner because you don't have an E on the end of your name. Wide receiver punt returner for the Browns. No. I mean, listen, they like Cooper a lot, and this was all voluntary. Cost him $100,000 to make a point. He just seems to be the type of guy that isn't going to miss training camp. He just turned 30 last week. I think they'll get something done. I mean, you've been seeing extensions with the Browns. Jimmy Haslam, they've been spending a lot of money. You're going to give Jerry Jeudy $17 million a year, and he's not done a thing with the Browns. Not saying that it wasn't a good move. The Browns were getting praised for getting ahead of the market, but he got 3-year, $51 million, so that's about $17 million a year. I mean, Amari Cooper is the only wide receiver in Cleveland Browns history to have back-to-back 1,000-yard years. Think about that. None of the, going back to Paul Warfield, Gary Collins, Webster Slaughter, all the receivers they had, none of them ever had back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons. And so Cooper's going to get paid. He's falling into that. He's not there yet, but the Julio Jones, the DeAndre Hopkins, if you look at a lot of those guys, they're getting they become the 1-year team to team guy in their 30s. Like, they signed for a 1-year deal. Cooper knows this is kind of his last chance to get a 3-year deal, or 2 or 3-year deal. And then he becomes that year-to-year guy. So I don't blame him. And I'm very confident the Browns are going to get something done. I think Ayuk, would be, I'd hate to lose Cooper, but it would be the way to go because I think he's only 25 years old. But you're going to have to extend him. The whole reason they're in this situation because he wants probably more money than Amari Cooper does.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to have to give him $35 million, a year for 3 years or something like that, at least. So I just really think it's much to do about nothing. I mean, why create a problem, when you don't need to? I don't think the 49ers are going to give him away. Cooper could be great for him, but he's 30. I think he fits better with the Browns. And Deshaun Watson really talked him up during mini camp, saying that he felt he was the best receiver in the game. When your quarterback says that, the Browns have to get something done with him. I mean, all the other guys, they've got stuff done. Why in the world would you take on any chance to sow discord, with your team, at this time? I just don't think right now they're necessarily talking because it's vacation time, but I fully expect him to be in Greenbrier. Last year, a lot of people don't remember because they weren't there watching it every day like I was. He didn't practice like the first week, almost the whole time in Greenbrier. Stefanski just said he had some minor something he was dealing with. He was coming off core surgery. They never
Mhm.
said what it was, but it was very minor. But he didn't practice almost a week and a half. So I don't think they're too worried. Players under contract, he's getting 20 million, 23 million this year. The fine is like 50,000 a day for missing practice once training camp starts. So I don't think it's going to get to that. It could be right down there, you know, on the eve of training camp or something like that. But he just seems like I just can't see him playing hardball. And the Browns are going to be fair. They're going to get something done. They're going to work this out. But I don't think you're going to trade him for Ayuk. I just don't think the 49ers are going to do that. And I don't think the Browns are even thinking about that. Now, if you could get Ayuk, and not give up Cooper, that's a different story.
Right. Yeah, I
But
think
I
they
don't
want
know.
Cooper and draft picks.
Yeah.
Because of the age difference. But yeah, absolutely. Another question here from Anthony Hunt in the YouTube chat room saying, "Hey guys, do we know how long the contract extensions for the GM and the head coach are yet?" And thank you. I don't think we've heard, have we, Fred? That hasn't leaked out yet.
It's a good question. But yes, unlike the players that are kind of public record with NFLPA and they go on overthecap.com and all the information there, it's not that way with coaches, general manager, front office people. I know they both originally signed 5-year deals. And so they were going into both their last year. If you remember right, I think Stefanski was hired before Barry, but now they're kind of meshed up together. I wouldn't be surprised if it's 4 years, 5 years. I don't know what the standard renewal is, but I don't think they're too worried about it. The length of time. I was told, I think Barry was agreed to or signed quite a while ago, or both of them. They just announced it, kind of waited. I don't think it's ever been a question. They like how they're on the same page. All you have to do is look at the results. 2 playoffs in 4 years, 2 coach of the years. Look at all the dysfunction we had here watching them at the OBR since '99. It's been
Yeah.
kind of nice. It's been an uneventful offseason to some degree. It's always great for clicks and everybody looking on our site with all the gossip and rumors and everything going on. But no, it's good to have stability, and that makes for a winning formula. You bring in new people, you're constantly churning, and they're starting all over. Every coach wants their own guy, every general manager, and so you're always starting over again. We've been there, done that. So I think it's a good thing. I think they really hope they're both here together for a long time. I mean, you can't argue with what the Steelers have done. 3 coaches since 1970. Really?
Mm-hmm.
That's unbelievable. And the Browns are hoping they see that stability, that these guys don't lose their whatever got them to coach of the year, and just because they have a losing year. But that's how the most NFL ownership run it. Oh, you have a bad year, you're fired, and you start over. We see that in the NBA. I mean, they do that
Yeah.
way more than Cavaliers. They go the second round of the playoffs, their coach gets fired. So no, stability is a good thing, but I don't know the terms. I would guess 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, we'll find out at some point, but yeah, it's taken a while to leak.
Nobody
Necronis,
puts it out unless the agent does, and the agents
yeah,
don't talk, you know, like they do about players.
yeah. Necronis writes, "Are we going to get Dustin Hopkins back? I know, or at least I thought I heard that we picked Cade York back up, which we did. Um, and I think that I recall us talking about Hopkins not looking like he's deathly injured um, last time we talked, right, Fred?
Yeah, he just pulled a hamstring, in that Houston game. So
Mm-hmm.
he's 100% healed. I mean, the Stefanski, was asked that. He wasn't at the OTAs. He was at the mandatory mini camp. It was only 3 days, but he was given a lot of the veterans didn't practice. I saw him kick in one day, but not field goals. York was kicking the field goals. He was practicing the new kickoff rule, in between the 20 and the goal line. I think the biggest question with him is, there's a little concern that your kicker has to be a tackler, and they don't want him out there, doing that. So they'll have to figure out what they're going to do there. But no, he's he's under contract. This is the last year of his contract. I think it's 2 to 3 million. So it was that was why the Chargers were willing to trade him, because and they went with a young kicker. So he's under contract. He's the kicker. The Browns like to have a backup. They've done that ever since COVID. They had Lucas Havrasik last year, and they had him on the practice squad after they traded for Hopkins. But the Rams signed him off the practice squad to be their kicker. As soon as the season was over, they signed Lucas Havrasik back to the 90-man roster, knowing they had Hopkins and Havrasik. And then when Cade York became available, they signed him. If you remember, they actually had 3 kickers on up through OTAs. Then they cut Havrasik. The reason there is because Hopkins wasn't at OTAs.
Right.
And Corey Bajorquez, the punter, is a left-footed punter. Turns out Havrasik punts too, and he's a right-footed punter. So they had those 2 guys alternating punts to get the look from both sides, as well as kicking. And York, I'll just tell you, this is what I think. They really like York. They hated to cut him. Like I said, we wrote about him. The guy's hitting it from 60 yards regularly every day in practice, and then he had a horrible preseason, and he finished it last year with the Chiefs, and he couldn't, I don't know what he did, but he was about 50%. They're saying, we can't trust this guy. We love him, and sooner or later he's going to figure this out, but we cannot go into the season with a good team and lose games because our kicker missed the field goal to win the game.
Right.
So I don't think anybody disagreed with that. So you go get Hopkins. Okay, I think this year they're hoping that they can keep York around on the practice squad as the backup to Hopkins. And when Hopkins' contract expires after this year, then you got Cade York for round 2.
Right.
He's going to figure it out. I mean, Daniel Carlson was drafted similar like York. I don't even think he was picked as high with the Vikings when Stefanski was there. He missed 2 extra points, and they cut him. And then he went to the Raiders. He's been a Pro Bowl kicker like every year since. So whatever it was with York, he's got the leg. He's just got to get whatever nerves or whatever out of his system. And at some point, I think they're pretty confident he's going to click, and they just can't take the chance on the field. So that's what I think. If somebody else picks him up, so be it. They kind of, that's what I gather from it. But yeah, Hopkins is fine, but he'll probably be, I would guess, unless they lose York or they don't feel good about him still. Hopkins, could be for extended, after next year. I don't know, but they're kind of 1 year at a time right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we've got one last question. It's a real interesting one. This one comes from Nab Cyan, and interesting name, and from YouTube. And it says you have one game to win, and you have to do it with one Cleveland Browns quarterback since the return, not named Baker or Deshaun. Who is it? Now, who would you pick as the Cleveland Browns quarterback to count on since '99 if you couldn't have those two?
I don't know how, because I mean, I still think one of the best they had was Tim Couch. He
Yeah.
just, you put him with this roster, and I think he's Josh Allen,
Mm-hmm.
the same type of a player, but you threw him into the fire with no offensive line, nothing. But he never really won, so he was on such a bad team and he got beat all up, so you really never saw him. But yeah, Flacco would have to be in the mix if you got the Flacco that we saw, you know. But it's pretty lean. Brian Hoyer had a run.
Right.
You're
Brian
throwing these
Hoyer
guys out there. Huh?
did have a good. I said Brian Hoyer did have a good run. You got to give him that. Kelly Holcomb had a good run.
Yeah,
At
Kelly
one point.
Holcomb, Derek Anderson, they definitely, had it's hard to measure with the teams and and they were playing in
Yeah,
the
yeah.
system.
I would have gone with Tim Couch as well. That would have been the first one I thought of. He was in such a bad situation without offensive line, Terry Kirby behind him. Not too many wide receivers. He had Kevin Johnson, and he had a good connection with Kevin Johnson, but not a lot of guys to throw to. And
Well, and all the expansion guys were, I think they could protect like 46 players or 40, 45 players. So you were really only allowed to choose like the very lowest guys on other teams' roster. Jim Pine
right.
was the first pick,
That's
and he
right.
was pretty good in his heyday, but he was like a 30 something, guys that they were like, well, we need to move on from the older guys. So, I mean, it'd be like buying a Bentley and setting it out in your yard or putting the salt mines. That's what I
Right.
felt with Couch. You get everybody wanted the fancy quarterback, number one pick, but you didn't surround him with any blockers, and he got the tar beat out of him. The kid was so broken up, he never really could show what he had.
Well, the NFL owners saw how quickly Jacksonville and Carolina got deep into the playoffs, and they said that was not going to happen with Cleveland. And they made sure of it by protecting all those players in the expansion draft. And sure as the world, there were years of misery in Cleveland. So the NFL owners got what they wanted. That's my rant of the night. I'm going to end on that rant and then go on vacation. So I've said my piece.
You're yeah, I see Seneca Wallace. You might as well throw out Cole McCoy or Jake Delhomme out there. What is there, 35 of them? I mean, there's got to be one lightning in a bottle.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But great question, and great questions all night, actually. Uh, all over the place, and very interesting and a lot of fun for us to go through this evening. I came here with 10 questions. I only got through 2 of them because you guys asked so many good questions and had so many interesting comments, other than, of course, the lies about my heritage, which are
I'm excited, Barry. Yeah, mid June, mid to late June, we got over 500 people, Browns fans tuning in.
Yeah.
And really thankful for all you guys. We're going to take a week off, and we'll be back in 2 weeks, and it'll be very close to training camp. And so I'm excited I think the Browns have a great chance. I'm writing position by position, and we'll have to talk about that Nick Chubb prediction that I made.
Exactly. Exactly. I'm going to keep these questions around for when we come back here in a couple of weeks. So we're off next week. We'll be back the week after, getting closer to training camp. He's Fred Greetham. I'm Barry McBride. Thanks for hanging out with us tonight. We'll see you in a couple of weeks. Go Browns. Thanks for hanging with us.
Thank y'all.